Okay. You have a folder, a Google folder. Right.
No,
That would be the easiest.
yeah, or if you could put it on a USB.
Yeah, I don't have
Don't
yours.
have one here either. I forgot one at the office.
So just go to that email. She might have, because I sent it to her, so she must.
Was it sent as a link?
No, that's why she printed.
Let's try. I don't know how big this family is. You got the USB? Okay. Yeah. Yes, one here as well. Can you find that? There's no application. No, this is
I
something
thought
else. Okay, just. This is the one she forwarded. And it says to the presentation, but there's nothing attached.
Okay, you are like safely. Let's see. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. Let's see.
Is it 1 to 6?
The summary.
Yeah.
So, two is not there.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
No. Able to make it through the street. Was that all that? Yeah. So as I was saying, indicated earlier, so I said I'll give you a brief synopsis, an overview of how we got to this point where we have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide. You will remember that in 2008 there was the hashtag the 20 shutdown march, right? That took place, and it had the 24 demands in it. One of the first demands was that the president should convene gender-based summit on gender-based violence, which happened that November 2018, right? At that summit, a number of things were agreed upon. And the way the summit was structured according to what we now have as the 6 pillars of the National Strategic Plan. So I'll say NSP in short, just to make sure that we save time. Out of that process in 2008 November, 2018 November, excuse me, we had a interim steering committee that was given the responsibility to, amongst other things, to try and, one, based on the declaration that was agreed upon, and I'm hoping that you have that declaration, because the declaration also forms the basis of why we have the National Strategic Plan. So a team of NGO members and government met almost every second Thursday to try and grapple with how best to address gender violence and what should be the response and the interventions, right? Remember, we have never had a roadmap on how we should address gender-based violence in this country. We all have views and we all do, but there was never a structured process that guides all of us on how to intervene, right? So that team that I was part of, I think Sarah was also part of, we worked very hard to put together this document. We did a couple of consultations in areas that we would normally not visit or even engage with, right? So it was in the 9 provinces, we really went into trying to elicit from community members, different CBOs and NGOs on how best to address this pandemic that is facing us. It culminated into a document that we handed over to the president end of April 2020, just before COVID hit. I mean, March, when we went on hard lockdown, we actually handed over this document to the president. We had a Zoom engagement on that, so that it became public, so that South Africans are fully aware that this work is being concluded. It is being handed over to government, right, to do what it's supposed to do as government. One of the key things that was demanded from government was that it needs to popularize this document, right? And if you look at it since 2020, we've done a bad job of it, because most South Africans are not aware of this document, let alone the people who are in the field working in gender-based violence and working in NGOs, not being aware of what the provisions of that document are, right? So we've done a bad job of it. Again, in 2020, when we had in the project, the organization that I'm part of, Wise for Africa, we had some money coming out of the funding that was given to us to put together the NSP. We then decided we need to do the infographics of this document, so that for those who can't read the entire document, we then have the infographics that can help you to navigate the contents of the NSP, right? So you will have copies of the 6 pillars to take with you, and you use it because it's the easiest way of understanding the NSP, but also very easy to navigate and understand, right? The infographics. In the 24 demands of the hashtag the total shutdown, we were very strong on accountability and leadership, right? Because if you have read literature, it's always said that there's no political will. So there's no leadership in these matters, right? So we felt very strongly that we demand accountability, not just accountability from the state or government or NGOs, but even individual accountability ourselves, right? In how we engage with the subject matter, but also how we address gender-based violence, right? Thirdly, it was around coordination. One of the biggest problems with where we are at the moment is that we are all very fragmented in our approach, in our response, in our intervention. Very fragmented, right? Fragmented to the point where we even fight amongst ourselves as NGOs, right? Because we want to get the biggest slice of the funding, at the expense of the cause itself, what the cause demand of us. So that and government for the longest of time had tried to come up with a structure to coordinate the efforts, right? But it did not work. If you talk about the gender-based violence council that was mooted, it was mooted many years, for many times and many years, and it never came to pass, right? So it was very important for us to have that multi-sectoral, multi-focused, coordinated structure at a national level, at a provincial level, at local level, for us to attack this. Because while we are all overwhelmed with this scourge, is that most days you feel like you're not doing enough, right? because as you're busy with this matter, another one comes up, right? It hits you again, the following day is 10 more that come, and you're thinking, this is where and are we regressing? Why are we not seeing any results? So we have not had scale in how we respond to gender-based violence, precisely because the efforts are not coordinated, right? So you don't even know what I do, right? Unless you are very close to me, right? And that's the issue. So I don't know what your organization is doing, right? I'm not interested, right? But we are all part of the national shelter movement, right? But we are not coordinating even amongst ourselves in the national shelter movement. So that's the biggest issue, and we need to grapple with that and get to find a proper coordinating mechanism for us to succeed, right? So once we draft the document and handed it over, very telling document, because one thing that it does, it needs preamble and introduction. It deals and it tells you what are the structural drivers of gender-based violence in this country. So we know what are the drivers, right? From patriarchy to cultural practice to traditional practices to substance abuse, all of it. We have literally diagnosed it correctly. They're drivers. They're not the cause. They're drivers of it, right? And I want to distinguish because we get bogged down in these semantics most of the times, right? They drive and exacerbate the problem, right? So once you are under the influence of whatever, whether it's nyaupe or alcohol, it makes you brazen and bold to do what you do, right? We deal with the cultural practices, and you know what the cultural practices that I'm talking about, I'm referring to. We're dealing with norms and traditional practices that impede and subjugate women into being children, right? So you can do as you please with women because you think they are not human beings, right? Patriarchy, that system of institutions that subjugate women is that. When you have a male-oriented perspective in everything that you do, that you see, right? It drives the notion that women are second-class citizens, therefore, right? So these are things that you are trying to do to address gender-based violence. You have 6 pillars of the NSP, 6. And all of them, never look at those 6 pillars in isolation of each other. They are all interrelated. They're all interconnected. The 6 pillars. You can't talk of research and data management at the exclusion of what is happening in care support, because for you to intervene correctly and properly, you need to have data to support your interventions, right? In care support, right? And the services that you have, and the suite of those services that you want to provide in your community. You can't talk of care support and services without talking about justice and law, right? And even economic power and economic empowerment of women. You can't talk of leadership and accountability and exclusion of law, policy, care support, data management. All these pillars are interconnected. So I'm going to go through each and every one just to give you a summary of those. There's a slide that gives you the summary of all of them, right? These presentations. But let's start with the first one that was most people are involved, like many organizations that are working around this to ensure that there's accountability, coordination, and leadership, right? At the moment in this country, no one wants to be held accountable for anything. When you go to a police station and a woman has gone to a magistrate court to get a protection order, and the protection has to be served and be served by the South African Police Service, and doesn't get served, and you ask the question, you are sent from pillar to post, right? No one wants to take account and responsibility for that. So that's accountability, right? accountability for the amount of money that you claim to give to DSD to support NGOs. They must account for it, right? Including us as NGO accounting for that money that we get given, right? Because it goes both ways, right? And in the accountability is a leadership that is bold enough to account to its constituency, right? So you can't stand up in public platforms and tell us that gender-based violence is it's a pandemic, it's a scourge, it's a crisis, but your response is totally different from that. That's not leadership, right? It's actually playing to the gallery more than anything. So the leadership that we're looking for is a leadership that recognizes how gender-based violence manifests, right? So if we continue to have analysis that are very pedestrian and simplistic, we're not going to make headway in dealing with gender violence in this country. Because for too long, our analysis has been very, very pedestrian, right? Without going deep into why we view women the way we do and why we believe that women don't deserve to be treated differently, given opportunities, right? That they deserve to be violated. Because it's a given that because I married you or you are my girlfriend, I can beat you up, right? I can beat you up. And I'm not held to account. I'm not held responsible. The first thing that we're going to do, once you say that we have been violated, we are going to ask you the question. So what were you doing in the first place? Why were you with that guy, right? You should have known. So you live in an environment that tells you that women should not be believed, right? Yeah, we need to be honest. We live in a world that tells us that women cannot be believed because the visuals and our socialization has told us that what is powerful is male, right? And male and men have got control over you. Right? They decide whether you can have an abortion or not. Right? They want to pass laws to tell you that you can't. Right? You live in a constitutional democracy that gives you the right to choose. But most times that right is taken away from you because they don't think that you've got the capacity to think for yourself, right? And in fact, you can even stand up and say, I was violated. Because once you do that, there's a problem with you, not the person who has violated you. The problem is you, right? So all of you have had cases where the woman's story is doubted. Her credibility is taken into shreds because society views us differently. They use a different standards on us, right? Part of this pillar one was about the appointment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence, right? How many of you remember, do you know where we are with this council at the moment? So I'm going to take you through. So 2020, this is what we say to government. This must happen, 2020, right? 2021, nothing happens. 2022, there's a second summit on gender-based violence. What does the president say at the second summit? Oh, I'm so sorry. I promise that the council will be in place. That was in November 2022, right? That summit in 2022, we then worked as NGOs to summarize and put together what we believed were the fast-track resolutions that must be addressed immediately. One of those was the appointment of the council, right? That was in January when we did that, right? March, April, the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth, and People living with disability called for a written and oral submission on the draft bill on the establishment of the council. So most NGOs, including ourselves, will make our submissions, and we were then given the opportunity to present in Parliament. It was oral, it was a virtual meeting. That was the worst ever portfolio committee that did the way it did its work, because they had set aside 2 days for these submissions, right? Poorly attended by members of Parliament in the first place. Right? Poorly attended. That first day, in morning, and those who presented in the morning, the afternoon, by 4 o'clock, you had no portfolio members because they had to rush somewhere. So the following day, the hearings could not continue. So we only had 1 day. Other NGOs could not be had. And that's what happened. That's the truth, right? What happens 2 weeks ago? Normally I get an alert. I see an alert and I get a media inquiry immediately. They've passed the bill in the National Assembly. Right? And they passed it without taking into account some of the views that we made as NGOs. I'll just deal with 2, really, so that you appreciate. Remember, we keep on emphasizing coordination and multi-sectoral approach, right? You can't coordinate at the national level and leave it at that. Coordination must happen across national, province, and when you talk national, we talk national government, national NGOs that are operating at national level, at the provincial level, all the government departments, NGOs, private sector that is operating at the provincial level. So once we have a bill that takes that away, and that's why we're very strong on the bill being tagged so that it gets provincial input, right? You take it to the provinces so that provinces can make an input on how that coordination is going to happen at the provincial level. What has happened now with the passing of the bill is that that is not taken into account. So you don't have that, right? So I don't know how we're going to remedy that problem. Because as the bill is passed in the National Assembly, which National Assembly then referred it to NCOP. So I'm hoping that by next week, NCOP is going to give it the thumbs up, because remember, what's happening now, things have been fast-tracked because Parliament is going on recess because we're going to elections, right? So all the outstanding bills must be passed as soon as possible so that then the president can assent all of them into law, right? So I'm sure before the end of this year, we'll have that bill ascended into law. What it requires from all of us is to then nominate people who must go into that council. So we need to think through of the individuals that you want to serve in that council, who understand have got a grounded understanding of gender dynamics, right? And understand how GBV in its nature manifests itself in this country. You will see in that bill, and that's the proposition that we had made even at the first summit, that NGO must be more represented in there. So we asked for 51% of the seats of that board that is supposed to be there, right? So be on the lookout for that. It's something that once it is established, my hope is that you will start to do the coordination work and pull all of us together so that we are able to track what is being done with what kind of resources and what kind of resources do we need to intervene correctly, right? So that's the work of that. So they pillar one really deals with how do we get ourselves organized as the NGO so that we are held accountable, we demonstrate leadership, right? And then we get the coordination that we want. This is also applicable not only to NGOs and government. Remember, we keep on saying that this NSP involves the 60 plus South African, 60 million South Africans. It's not an NGO problem, this issue, right? It's not the national shelter movement problem. It's a country societal challenge that must be addressed by all of us. So you and I must see ourselves in any of these pillars on what my contribution is going to be to make a difference, right? Any other South African who might not be involved, must intimately involved in this work, must be able to find themselves in here, right? And that's our responsibility, to make other South Africans to find themselves in these 6 pillars. So that's leadership, coordination, and leadership, accountability, coordination, and leadership. Paramount to this is the budgets. We have never had a set-aside budget for GBV in this country, ever. Right? That's why when you ask them to account, they can account, because when the money is allocated, it's not allocated as a GBV program. So DSD, for instance, when it puts together their plans to National Treasury, they will have programs of, so part of this being here would have been budgeted for that. We would like to conduct a summit or a workshop, but that's not what we're looking for. But that's how departments will be asking for this money, right? We don't have a dedicated pot of money that is given to now say we need 10 billion to deal with this scourge, right? And that's what we asked for. When we did the National Strategy Plan, when we costed it, the National Strategy Plan, the cost at the time when we did it, we looked at 10 billion over a 3-year period, right? Which has not been made available. Because you're not going to make headway and intervene if you don't make those resources available, right? So we take it that once the council is established, that budget gets allocated at the council level, and then the council can intervene through a multi-structure, multi-sectoral approach, right? So that, any questions on accountability, coordination, and leadership before I move to pillar 2? Do we get it? What is expected of all of this? It's got targets that NSP on each and every pillar. You'll see when you read it, it gives you the targets. And when is it reviewed? When do we review it? We can't review it at the moment because it was never budgeted for. I mean, come on, 2020. And in fact, when we went to the last year's summit, 2020, there was a 2-year review. I mean, why are you doing a 2-year review? It will never tell you the story. This is too early. You didn't even give the resources to answer it. So the next review should be, so where we 2020, 24, 25, 26, 27, we need to have a review, right? Of whether we are making inroads and making any impact, right? So that's that. It involves everyone, as I said, and I want you, and you need to appreciate that it's a strategy that is all-encompassing. It's everybody is required to be involved. We can then move to pillar 2. So this is one of my favorite ones. Prevention, restoration of social fabric. We have done zilch on this. No prevention strategies at all. what we have been doing is we have been in crisis mode, right? Intervening because this one was beaten, this one was raped, this one was moved from there. You know, we don't have a plan on how we're going to have consistent, constant prevention strategies and campaigns so that this thing is in the minds of every South African to understand. So that's what we did with HIV and AIDS, right? People knew because every day, whether on radio, on TV, whether with Soul City, they could see some stuff being produced. We have not done this with GBV at all, completely. And if you are to do justice to the millions of women, LGBTQ persons, non-binary, we have to put resources into prevention, intervention, and strategies. We have to. As a movement, you need to define what is that strategy, what is your prevention strategy? How do you ensure that you don't have as many women coming through your doors? What are those strategies that you're going to develop? That's part of the work that needs to be done. The issues of parenting that come up, we intervene at schools, at primary schools, we intervene at high schools, we intervene at higher education, we intervene at churches. It has to be everywhere. You see how it interconnects, right? It requires all of us to really put time and effort on how do we do this, right? What is the social fabric that we want? I mean, every day we wake up, South Africans say, oh, how did we get here? And I think we know how we got here. Because for the longest of time, we stood back and said, it's someone else's problem, right? And we thought that someone or somebody must do something. I'm not responsible, right? And now we are facing a crisis, not just in GBV, but almost every part of what makes our society, right? We're all complaining about excessive use of drugs and substance abuse in our local communities, right? High unemployment, right? High cost of living, right? All of those have got an impact in the work that we do every day, right? So if you are looking for a restoration of a social fabric, it cannot happen in a vacuum. And I always say, let's all not look at gender-based violence in isolation of everything that happens in our environment. It's not a standalone GBV. It sits adjacent to education, health, employment, transport, all of that. Right? So once you remove it from all the other things, you're gonna grapple with making people understand it, right? We understand that Department of Women developed a national prevention strategy. Apparently it was a mess, so I don't know where we are. Because the NSP required that we develop a prevention strategy so that people then can decide where do they fit in, right? So if you take, for instance, that you are more suited to be at schools, what are the prevention, what kind of prevention strategy do you design for schools, right? Is sex education part of it? Is human rights training, what you do for, governance training for young kids, all of that, you decide. This is the intervention, but how do you intervene? Do you intervene by having workshops? Does it work for children? Maybe no. What is the best way of engaging children nowadays? What's the best way? Social media, right? That's what they know, right? TikTok. So you need to be getting into that and making them understand and appreciate and not see this as something that they need to run away from, right? Engage with them, right? If you decide that you're targeting high schools in your area, Same thing. Those kids are very impressionable. They think they're hip and happening. What you do to lure them and attract them to these kinds of programs so that it resonates and understand how it fits into their everyday lives, right? So when I say we have failed here, I'm not underestimating it. I'm serious. We have not even started. We have not scratched the surface. We have not done anything, right? I'm sure with the 60 days now, you're going to see many events, right? And I think, truth be told, we need to ask the questions: are these events helping us? Or are we doing them just to tick a box to the funder and say, oh, I did a workshop and that's so we need to ask those hard questions, because for me is that if we are not deep, we don't ask those hard questions, we'll continue to answer the questions why so many women are killed by their partners, why so many young girls are sexually assaulted, so many women are raped, women are sexually harassed, LGBTQ community no one is safe. We're looking for. So what we have been doing in this country is that everything that we're doing is to say we need to protect women from the danger. So no one talks about these dangerous people, the danger itself, right? No one. So we must find a way. Oh, okay, maybe I should wear a longer dress, right? Maybe I should not go to the tavern. Maybe I should not walk in the streets after 6. So everything that we have been doing ourselves as women is to respond to,
Getting yourself back all the time.
Literally, we are not focusing on why are we not addressing the danger itself that we know, right?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
We had this interesting conversation because we're busy working on a program that's called the bystander program.
Yeah.
And we were looking to see if we can intervene with taxi drivers, and people were saying that it's better for women who are wearing, like, if you're showing cleavage or a short skirt, or sit in the back so that you're not a distraction. But all these decisions we make for ourselves are putting ourselves at a back foot.
Absolutely. No, we do. And as if you and I don't know that a 6-month-old baby has been raped who wears a diaper. So it's got nothing to do with how you're dressed, right? So if a 6-month-old baby can be raped with a diaper, you wearing a longer dress, what is it going to change? So nothing. So when you talk of change this attitude and the I don't know how many of you are active on social media, especially on Twitter, right? I'm going to give a quick example. That was in 2019, I think. What happened? Was it 2019, right? 19, right? That led to many young women at universities coming out. So you had this group of women. I mean, I was called in to look at it. It was on Twitter. What these young women did was they set up a Twitter account called Help Survivor, right? What was happening with the Help Survivor is that the women were DMing the account owner with information of who are the abusers. So someone will talk about their story. Now, what's interesting, it was fascinating, was that in the stories, the women were putting their names and their pictures and write the story. Such and such a time I went to a party here and there, and this doesn't mention the men, but the story is said, and then they would post it on Twitter. What was interesting is that the men found themselves in those stories because most of them sued those girls. So we did those cases, right? So it was very interesting. The woman did not mention you, but you happen to see yourself in that story. There are 9,000 of these men. Right? Of the 9,000, we received between 20 and 30 letters of demand telling these young girls or these young women to stop, right? So we wrote back to say, you do whatever you want to do. So out of the 9,000, between 20 and 30 letters of demand, of those, only one went to court. So it was at the Pretoria High Court we went. And the guy was claiming 800,000 from these young women because he believed that they defamed him by saying whatever it was said, right? So we argued with the judge that first and foremost, this is an account, right, that was a conduit. So you can't tell the account to apologize. We can't apologize because the stories are not ours, the owners of their Twitter account. That's not their story. You can't apologize and say, I'm sorry that I said you are a rapist. I don't know. It's someone's story. So if you want, can we call these women to come? They're the ones who must tell their stories. I mean, the judge realized and told the guy, you're not getting 800,000. Was not happy, kept on saying, I want an apology. I mean, we can't. Right? It's not our. So it's the cyberbullying and the attack on women on social media, especially Twitter, is toxic, right? That's when you see how men rally behind. So once a woman comes out and says, I was violated, here you must see the vitriol that comes. Then you understand what kind of animals we're dealing with, right? Because they don't even give themselves the opportunity to just understand and appreciate what this woman is talking about. So the quick response is that she's lying. She's a gold digger. She wants this. I mean, this is what they said about Casey with the PDD now, right? Not understanding that Casey lodged a civil claim against Diddy. So remember, there's a criminal case and a civil claim. Once I go after you civilly, I'm going after you because I want damages to be paid because you've wronged me, right? So when you start saying that she's a gold digger, her case and her claim is a civil claim. It's about you paying. A criminal matter is the responsibility of the state, remember. The state is given the responsibility to prosecute. It's a criminal case. Once I'm violated and I'm raped, the state has got an obligation, once I report it, to investigate and bring that case on my behalf, right? That's why we don't interfere in a criminal case because the state that is running that case through its prosecutors, right? They do a bad job most of the time, right? But that's what it is. The criminal case is against the state. The state acts on behalf of its citizens, right? A civil case is different because it's individual to individual, right? So I issue summons against you. You say I've defamed you. I prove my case, and I win. I get my 800,000. So that's a difference. Okay. So when people try to say all of this, always remember the two distinctions, right? It's a criminal matter. Most of the time, we don't have control over that because the state is the one that has got that responsibility, right? So I think we need to run, almost all of us, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to get going on prevention interventions. We have to, can move to pillar 3, yeah. So pillar 3 is about protection, safety, and justice. Really, it's re-engineering how the law is conceptualized, right? And whether it's victim-centered, right? Our law at the moment is not victim-centered. So think about it. When I say I'm raped, it's a crime, right? Rape. But I'm forced to take a stand and relieve that in the stand, right? Talk about what happened. And if you had followed the Omodoso case, you would see what the defense counsel for the perpetrator, what he tried to do to one of the victims, right? Now, so the law, one, it has not been victim-centered at all, especially in gender violence cases. DSD was supposed to, I don't know where that bill is at the moment, but you must ask them. Remember, they had the victim support bill. I know that we made written submissions 2-3 years ago, but I don't know where that bill is. So please ask them. They're here. Ask them, where is the victim support bill? Because it's supposed to address some of these issues that we're talking about in this pillar, right? We also have laws. So one thing that we must all accept, laws are not the solution to the problem. Let's be clear. They're not. They are there to assist, right? But they're not the solution to the problem. Right? We passed the Domestic Violence Act, we passed the Sexual Offences Act, we passed all the applicable laws, and you still have huge crises, right? So why hasn't it helped? Why is it that we have huge numbers of, so if you look at the recent crime stats that just came out last week, actually. So did you see the stats on rape and sexual assault? Horrific. 10,000 between July and September of women raped. It's insane, right? And be rest assured that of that 10,000, maybe 5% will be successful, will be a successful conviction, right? Because we don't have a robust investigating capacity in the South African Police Service. Very honest, we need to be honest. We don't have. We had a lab, a forensic lab that had been sitting with a backlog of 500,000 cases, right? So when you are a victim, you have reported your case, your swab has been sent to the lab 5 years ago, still waiting for justice. That's not justice, right? And you have leaders of this country who stand up and tell us the reason. So once you come and tell me the reason, you have failed completely, because we shouldn't be there, right? Shouldn't. But that's what we did. So all these victims and survivors of this violence had to wait for many years for that process to be concluded so that the matter can be then enrolled in court. I mean, are you still interested after 5 years as a survivor of sexual assault? No. But that's the level of disregard for women in this country. We came up with a model, the TCCs, right, to help us. That model is a good model because it's a one-stop shop that is supposed to, you walk in as a victim and a survivor, you're exposed to people who are well-trained on how to handle your case. So from once you walk in through that door, how you are received is very important, right? Those TCs, when they were conceptualized, the funding for them, it was foreign funding, right? Yes, it was foreign funding. They were supposed to be set up and then handed over to the South African government to continue with their funding and expansion. There was a huge crisis once the funding came to a halt, right? Because it's done. We conceptualized these things with you. We funded for a good 5 years. Now it's your turn to take them up. It was a crisis, right? So justice was fighting with health. Where do they belong? Justice said they belong with us. Health said, but we want to take them. It was just a mess. But we've asked for the expansion of TCCs in the country, and that must happen, right? Especially in areas where you don't have the full facilities like you have in the urban areas, right? So we have to fight for these TCCs to be established and being resourced, right? There was one that was opened, I think, this year. I'm hoping that there'll be more opened, right? What we have not done with the kind of, so what we, once we pick up there's a problem, we think that we need to have the law to plug that gap, right? There's a case that is going on at the moment in the Pretoria High Court after the Xoko matter. Remember Xoko matter, right? It was a rape case in the Eastern Cape. That was the case. It was Mukaitobi who gave the judgment. And that was it. I mean, Mukaitobi put that the lower court found that the young woman was raped, right? The man appeals, and Mukaitobi, who was acting judge at the time with the Eastern Cape, then finds that there was consent because the girl had kissed the guy. I mean, it's such rubbish. So the case was appealed, and there were there's an organization called Embrace who have taken that because one of the women in the Embrace case is a victim of rape, but not a different, and she's dealing with consent and how we view consent, right? And it's so I can be with you here as a partner or someone. We can kiss, nothing wrong, right? And when I say to you, and when you want to go further, and I said no, that kissing cannot be used as an excuse that I wanted to be raped or I wanted to have sexual intercourse with you. No. And that's really the gist of what that Xoko matter was about, right? So they are challenging. So we are supporting that, including Center for Applied Legal Studies, to challenge how consent is interpreted and viewed, right? And this is where we also are trying to be strategic in getting into cases that will change the jurisprudence and bring a feminist jurisprudence in some of our courts. I mean, when you go to court and you listen to these magistrates and judges, you want to puke because they have got no grounding on feminist understanding and even gender dynamics. They don't, right? So if you don't go to court and put in this language, we are in trouble. So we have managed to do that in the Western Cape ourselves, WISE, together with Women's Legal Center, in 2 cases that were defamation, 2 women being sued for having spoken about their experience at the hands of men who assaulted them. And the judges got it in the Western Cape. Those 2 judges got it in the Western Cape. We had a case in the Constitutional Court of a gang rape. They got it in the Constitutional Court. And really, that case was dealing with the role of the police in investigating rape cases, right? In this case, if this woman who was gang raped, she was tenacious because she followed up. with the police every time. How far is my case? What's happening? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? To the point where she then had to find private investigators for herself, right? So it's a cost, right? And do that work and be able to expose the ineptness of the South African Police Service. And that was the matter that we went to court on, because she won her case in the High Court in the Eastern Cape. The police themselves, after that case, the African Police Service decided to appeal, take it to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and they won, right? We then decided, no, we go to the Constitutional Court. So to ourselves, Center for Applied Legal Studies again, and her. And we won. And if you read that judgment, the justices were scathing on the SAPS's investigation capacity, because listen, if you are investigating a case, you have to investigate. You can't say, I took a statement and because she said this, no. You have to investigate. Go and talk to the people that were with this survivor of rape who was assaulted. Go and go to the area, investigate. What they don't, is that the most lazy, they're lazy. They don't. And they didn't investigate, and they were shown in the case that you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. So, and they didn't have an answer. They thought that what they did was enough. No. If you are a passionate detective, you know what you should be looking for. And if you don't know, and maybe that's the question, that maybe the team that we have in the South African Police Service are not geared towards investigating gender violence in this country, gender violence cases. They're not. They don't know, right? They claim to be trained, but my sense is that, they even struggle to say these terms themselves. They struggle, right? So that's part of this safety and justice. And we can't get justice when, the entire criminal justice system is fraught with incompetence, right? We can have the best laws ever. We have just passed 3 bills, domestic violence. We pushed for that as a matter of course. Every case that appear in the magistrate court or in the high court that is a gender-based violence case, bail must be opposed, right? It was never the case. My prosecutors were working, they grant bail, that it didn't matter. So we put up a fight. No, at least oppose the bail, right? It sends a message around impunity. It sends a message. Once you start fighting and opposing that bail, it sends a message to perpetrators, right? So you have that. The third thing that we fought for was the National Sex Offenders Register, right? Remember that that register was only covered children and people living with disability. So what it meant is that those who violated children will be on the register, right? So if you are a teacher and you're applying for a position in school, the school must check that register first, right? I don't know how many of them do. I don't think they do. Or any other organization or company that is working with children. Once you apply for work to work with children, we must check you against that register. Same with people with living with a disability. What we then did was, and we won, was to expand it now to include any, right? So any person who gets convicted of a sexual offense, assault, rape, must be on that register. And in fact, there's been cases now where judges give that order that this individual who has been found guilty must also appear on the register, right? Now, I'll give you an example. The US is very good with the register because it's public. We get to know that you're an offender, sexual offender, right? When we were making submissions, I don't know how many, we were fought by many organizations to tell us about privacy. Hey, man. And the Constitution and whatnot. And we pushed back, right? But I mean, you could pick up that your legislature, meaning the members of parliament, were too concerned about, we can't make this register public. Why not? You have once you offend in that manner, in that brutality, you lose even the right to be treated with dignity because you didn't yourself, right? And that was our argument, right? When we say it must be public, it protects the victims and survivors, right? Now, what the US does is it's public, and I don't know, you would have seen, is that once that community gets to know that this individual is, they even print pamphlets and put it in different shops and to say this individual is a, please be aware. So that you protect yourself, right? You know. And what happens with when once that happens is that the perpetrator decides to leave the area. Because that's what most victims would say. Why am I being subject to live with the same perpetrator in the area, in the same community? I must see this person on a daily basis and contend with that and be okay with it, right? These are some of the things. So I mean, we're still working on this feminist jurisprudence. It's not an easy one, but it requires tenacity, and we act it just to make sure that we have laws that achieve what we want to achieve, right? This gender equality and equity that we talk about. But as I said, please ask DSD about the victim support bill, right? Because most of the victims of violence, gender violence, don't even have the money to fight some of these cases. So most, even if you have a good case, you decide it's not worth it. I'm leaving it. Legal aid is not available to help you, but legal aid is available for a criminal, right? Who appears in court, who has murdered someone, they are afforded representation. They can approach the legal aid for representation. That's our system. We need to say something. Yeah. Please do.
Because I think, as you were saying, out of 10 victims, I think it's only 2 who get justice.
Yeah.
Many times, okay, the area, I think it depends on the area.
Yeah.
Because in other, you find that the police themselves, victim will go to the police station and report the domestic violence, and that victim is really assaulted, is damaged. Yeah. But the police will take that man today, and tomorrow that man is back home.
Yeah.
And most of them, they are saying they come out. The speaker said, "What were you thinking then?"
Yeah.
Because I know they know everything, but the evidence is there. This way to protect the victims and give them justice. We really need justice for the victims.
No, we do. No, absolutely, we do.
It's midway. We want this to be active. But I saw many women that didn't find justice. In Orange Farm, we have women who are paralyzed, who are disabled by their
Partners.
partners.
Yeah, you sue them.
We have women die. We have women who are raped, and the police tell them that we're not just from this case because the person who raped you is well known. And that case in 2015, that the lady ended up dropping the case because the police themselves, they were telling her that this man is well known and your life could be in danger, your
Yeah.
life. So she ended in power.
Yeah.
Man. So I'm dropping the case.
Oh, yeah.
For the sake of my life, and my baby's life,
Yeah.
my partner's life. So this pillar had to work
It has to work, but
to protect women out there, to protect children out there. We are in a case at school where a teacher was raping children and infecting them with HIV.
so what have you done? I mean, that's an easy case where you sue the Department of Basic Education.
And all issue case. The case was in hotel. The Department of Education. They didn't want to take the case to the court.
But you can.
Because the school knew that it's us who brought out that case.
Yeah, but I'm saying, so, I mean, simple, that's on the civil side. So, you know, and that's what they do and do well. You can sue the Department of Basic Education. Civil case against the Department of, so what about the criminal side? Go for the civil case against the Department of Education for their.
Many sentence. But
Yeah.
Yes, that they told us, no, you will never be a teacher again. But we didn't believe that.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying go after the Department of Basic Education. You have to go after the Department of Basic Education. We've got one case against them where, you know, remember, all these schools, there is a protocol. There is the Children's Act, right? Once you register as a school, right, there are certain requirements expected of you, right? I can't register you as Department of Basic Education if you don't meet the following requirements, right? And one of the comments is that where you're dealing with children, you have to protect children, right? We invoke the Children's Act, right? If a child gets molested in your school, as an owner of the school, we're going to hold you liable. The owner of the school will, so the school is, remember, they are public schools, they're owned by government. So you go after government, right? So it's for me here, it's I think, Nisa, you should conduct a workshop around all the legislations that are in place, right? So that you see how one fits into the other, right? The Domestic Violence Act, how you apply, there's confusion on how you apply for a protection order in this country. Huge confusion, right? And how this protection order must be served. So I know I've seen it, it's complication. Can we afford a situation where a woman who has just been assaulted, right, does not even have the money to get into a taxi, must go to a court, because that's where you need to apply for a protection order, right? The courts are not in your area. You need to go to Randburg, for instance, right? From Orange Farm. What is, so this justice is elusive to many others because it's costly, right? But their rights are being violated all the time, right? One of the things that they said they're going to do is to introduce an online application of a protection order. That has not happened as yet, right?
Say that. They say that.
No, I mean, it's not, please. So just check. So please do the exercise as organizations that are on the ground to test all of that, right? To test whether when you apply for a protection order for someone, what is an online, just do that and see what happens. Okay. Yeah, so Sarah, go ahead. Yeah.
We came to the victim program, and then because they are
The victim empowerment bill.
so
Oh, oh, all right, yeah. 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 Okay. Right. Right.
So then we are talking about the protection order online. But now we need to understand which order is first. So
Yeah.
it's not like
You do, yeah, true.
What if the police here, if they got this for us and they go somewhere for the and we were like, was the person who was updating most of them, and the ones who are doing direct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and they go after that, they gave us all the copies.
Yeah. So I think you should, that's something that you should do, right? It's important to understand what are the provisions of all these laws and what, how they can help you in executing your work, right? Because that's what you, so when someone walks in through your doors, you should be able to give them advice, right? It's important. Okay. I think for me is, I don't know how many of you go through these courts. So if you look at Redback and you go to the domestic violence section, I tell you, your dignity is shredded into pieces. That's not the way to deal with, to treat people with respect. You don't do that, right? So we've been trying to find a way of our courts being victim friendly, right? Because I mean, when you are at Randbrook Court in the corridor there, you are all waiting, they just scream, Sarah, court number 6. Right? It's ridiculous. Yeah, that because they all know, remember, everyone knows that this is domestic violence section. So there's no privacy. There's absolutely nothing, right? So
That can take out and the power of the.
they said that. We'll take that one.
Loud and that gang to say that.
So meaning the rape and the rapist and the rape.
Yeah.
That's how they called it.
The raper and the rapist. Called loud outside.
Jesus.
Now, by that one.
Yeah. Okay, Sima, let's move to the next one.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is where most of you are, right? Pillar 4, which is on response, support, and healing, really, right? That's your work. That's what you do, and it's also that victim empowerment service support bill. They, that's as them. They say, pass, but there's nothing happening. And we also don't have the legal framework that we're looking at for this to happen, right? Now, there was work that was done by. Sorry.
No, I was just looking to see if there was questions in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. Yeah, so some you see. So she said
protection
the
order,
protection
not
order.
online.
And they still have to print. I mean, where do you get the money to be printed all of that? So the online. So remember when you say online, you must start and conclude it online, and press send, and it's done. It gets recorded. So what is this thing of having to print? So yeah, no, and it just at your cost. Oh, come on, yeah.
Domestic violence court in Pretoria has one holding room for both parties. further the experience is as though you have been asked to be violated.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, truly. So I think we are the custodians of this work, and we should be the one driving the solutions, because when we get into a meeting so you don't need the NPA for them to come and present just the laws. You need to tell the NPAs about the conduct of their prosecutors, because remember, the prosecutors fall under the NPA, right? So if you don't say to them, our experience of your prosecutor is X, they will not do anything, right? They need to hear from all of us who are operating and working directly with survivors on what is the best approach, right? We should be guiding them, right? Not the other way around, right? So this is what you do. You do it, and you do it sometimes with no resources, right? That's a huge problem for me. In that you are expected to provide this package of services, but there's no matching resources and financial resource to be able to do that, right? And this, yeah, and the research was done on the cost of these services. The government must pay for it, right? Or any other person who wants your assistance must be able to pay for that service. Not the victims. I'm talking about once you believe that you've got people that you want to be assisted, and this is the package that is being offered, must be paid for. Can't be for free all the time, right? But where we have stepped in to assist government because they don't have the capacity, they can't expect people to work for mahala, right? You volunteer for mahala, no, I mean, really, right? No, yeah, right? And this work also is about how you also take care of your emotional well-being and mental well-being, right? What do you do? Because listening to these stories every day can affect you. So your debriefing sessions, what is that? Are you given time off for a week just to recharge, right? And replenish your mind and your body. Those things must happen, right? Because it's tough work. Okay. Any questions on care, response, care, support, and healing? I mean, we try, and we see on a daily basis that the demands are high. Every day there is a request for this intervention, request to do this, request to do this. Sometimes you can't do it, right? And that one time when you can't do it, you are painted to you are the worst organization, right? It's just one time when you can't do it, right? So be aware sometimes when you say, I can't do it, just to say, we don't have the capacity now, but I can refer you, right? Because people are capable of destroying people's reputations and organizations, right? So always try and say, I can refer you to others, they can assist. We don't have at the moment, we are inundated and we have reached our threshold. Because we need to all be open to meet people also, right? No matter how grave the situation is and that this person needs help now, if you can't do it, you should be able to be open and say, I can't do it, right? However, I can refer you to X and Y and Z, okay? All right, let's move on to pillar 5. So this is a pillar that most people don't, when we're doing the NSP, and I had to work, I was supposed to work with 3, 4 people on this. I ended up working on my own on this chapter, but anyway. And there's a reason why we thought, but we all know that we always say that most women are not willing to leave abusive relationships because they cannot financially support themselves, right? So we have to, there have to be some interventions that support women to be economically independent, right? Not that when you're economically dependent, you can't be abused, but you have choices when you have the resources, right? You know that I can walk away, go and find a place for myself with my children and still take care of them, right? I can approach the courts and they can take my matter. But when you don't have, you are wholly dependent on this abusive partner, you are stuck, right? So it's important that everything that we do takes that into account, that we need to give women to be economically independent and give them financial independence, right? So the programs that we must, so you know, one of the programs that came up was We Corner, right? It's part of the Pillar 5 team that is working to try and get economic programs going in the different areas, right? And give women the opportunities. There was a mention of a 40% set aside for women businesses to take opportunities in government, right? And we've not seen the result of that, but I mean, it must start, it must happen somewhere. The second thing is around maintenance and support of women and children. Remember, I mean, this past weekend I met a woman who had a baby shower, and then she's got a 13-month-old baby. So I asked the question, "Oh, is the father? You're no longer with the father." "No, I'm no longer with the father." "Is the father supporting or even seeing the child?" "No, the father is not seeing the child, not supporting. And I don't want him to the support." So I say, I always advise women, don't ever make decisions on behalf of the child because of your shit, right? You have to fight for the support of that child, right? The child must be maintained. If you are a spouse and you are dependent on that man, you must be supported too. There's nothing wrong with that. At the moment, there are men who are asking for support from their wives because their wives earn more than them. They're not ashamed to be asking for spousal support. But women, proud, I've got pride. I'm walking away from, hey, right? So you have to do that, right? It's tedious work. It takes a lot. We need to find ways where we make it easier, right? But it's we have to do that. And we know that most fathers, what they do to avoid paying maintenance, they now use their parents' bank accounts for them. Remember, once you don't pay, I can garnish your salary, right? So what they're doing, they now want their salary to be paid into their parents' account to avoid responsibility. Yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah, they will try all sorts of tricks just to be held accountable, right? But that's so I think this is a long-term project that we involved in, and we need to hear from We Corner on what are those opportunities that exist in the private sector, that exist in the public sector to empower women to gain financial independence. You've got a repository of women that come through your doors, right? You should be able to say, these are the women that should be supported, right? Financially, right? And get them skilled in whatever skills that that can be given. We need to be that creative at that level, right? We can't expect it at a higher level. At a higher level, but at your level where you interacting with this woman. So we've got 10 of them that are struggling, right? You then need to develop a program to skill them and work with other organizations. And this is what the networks that we have built should be able to yield results and produce something for you, right? Yeah. Who? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Mm. Right. Right. Right.
And then it was just good. But now after that,
Mm.
the challenge that I see, some of the things I'm not sure. The one that the money that somebody is to make sure that she gained and she has the donation. So that she inside the shop.
Yeah,
And then we realized that in this state of this comparative, we started to plant the system.
Yeah.
So they came back, some of the shepherds farm to buy the material. Like,
Yeah.
for example, in national money to buy the gas machine, the solar machines, overall, is fast.
right,
So now the time is, who's going to pay? Sana? Because somebody must be there to do the skills development and they must do the marketing. etc.
Mhm.
So we can make.
right,
Right.
right. Okay. It will. So here's the thing for me, the basic low hanging fruits. You wearing t-shirts. Who manufactured these t-shirts? And caps and the bags that are being given. So simple things like those should be done by the women who yes. Why are you associating all of this with? Yeah. Seriously. And that's why I say you've got a list of these women. You know them. If they come through your doors, you know them. So we should do that. So we can't expect someone out there to do this empowerment. It should start here with us first, right? You be able to grow with yourself and give an example of this pillar 5, by the way. Because as I said, they're all interrelated and intertwined. Yeah, yeah. Good. Yeah, yeah. They should. Okay.
So we should challenge
Yeah.
DSD and NSP. Source or procure everything.
Yeah, from
Indaba.
yeah, Ufa, right? But also then,
Woman of
yeah,
confidence.
exactly. But so for me is nothing stops you from even acquiring land, right? Nothing. You acquire land, you tilt that land, you grow that land, you are able to feed people, no one goes hungry. We cannot have a woman killing herself and her children because they were hungry. No. There is no, that is unforgivable. Okay. All right. That's pillar 5. So, yeah. Yeah. So this is all digital data management, research. So what we've been looking to do a research on is a baseline research on GBV in this country, because we don't have a baseline of, so you'll hear 1 in 9, 1 in 5, 1 in 3, but it's not scientific. We don't know, right? We need to drill down and be able to scientifically say, yes, we did the research, we can say that, right? We just complete, the census has just been concluded. We know that we are in the majority, as always, as women in this country, right? But we are the highest unemployed. We're sitting at 50 something percent, especially Black women, right? At 51 or 52% unemployed. The most hit province of women unemployed is the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, Free State, right? Yeah. So our interventions must take those into account, right? So the research, so once we have Stats SA coming up with that information, the work that needs to be done now by the council when it comes to is to, and we need a coordinated digital management system, so that it informs our decision making, informs our interventions, it informs our responses. If you look at, so one example that we put forth in the, and people still think when we're making comments to the portfolio committee on justice on the 3 bills that were passed on domestic violence. And that's why there must be an integrated justice system, right? If you're not paying your maintenance, you should be able to get a driver's license. Simple as that. Because it's the only way that we're going to make people appreciate their responsibilities, right? So the entire traffic management system must be able to talk to the justice system. That justice system is the domestic violence, is the maintenance court, is the children's court, is the guardian fund, because remember the guardian fund is for children, right? All of that system must talk to each other. Once you punch in an idea of someone, you should be able to give a history of that individual, right? And know that he's about to renew his license, but he's outstanding on his maintenance. You send him a reminder, or your license is due. However, you have not paid your maintenance. Please pay. But this is that date. Because you won't get your driver's license. That's what the US does. That's all. That's what the UK does. We have to change this behavior. And the behavior can be changed by carrot and stick approach. Right? And I give you a carrot on that. If you pay before then, you get a discount. You see, right? But we've made some of these propositions, but we're dealing with people, I don't know, who maybe themselves are not paying their maintenance, right? So they think it's not, why are you doing this to us, right? Yeah, right? You should not be, we should make life difficult for you for forcing the state to take care of your children, right? Because remember, once you don't maintain your children, the mother is forced to go and apply for a grant, right? You are running away from your responsibility, right? But the state must step in, take care of that, right? That's why then it's also important for that woman to have an incapacity, be empowered in terms of Pillar 5, economically. So this is work in progress. They've got a good team that is working. But in the absence of a structure, all this work is sitting all over the show, right? All over the show. And the Department of Women has not assisted at all. Remember that, it's just a mess with them too, right? So yeah, those are the pillars. 6 pillars that you must know. Sing them, eat them, right? And they will hold you in good stead. When we then go for the review in 2-3 years' time, we should be able to be putting very strong changes, because we have seen what has transpired in the last 3, 4, 5 years with the NSP, and want new changes, right? So, any more questions? I'll take. And then the last slide really is the summary of the 6 pillars that you can use at any given time. It summarizes what the pillars are about. Okay. Yeah. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the Kenya one, I would say and yet when you look at it, you take the pillar 4 and then pillar are also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Is there a question there?
Mostly comments.
Okay, the comment favor.
SEPS delivers, SEPS services to deliver the court order to the respondent is more pathetic as the victim
Yeah.
has to accompany the officer and then wait for hours at the police station, further questions asked by the officer, and it's so intimidating and shameful.
No, it is. No, that's a fact.
Mm.
That's a fact. Sarah, sorry, thought your hand was up. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think, listen, we've got our work cut out. It has been cut out for the longest of time, so we just need to continue and not hope. I don't live on hope. I live on results, and I drive the results myself. So, you know, I want things to be done. You know, and they must be done. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
This is a small token of appreciation.
It's away. What happened?
Yeah.
Sure.
1, 25 plus 1. We started a bit late.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So
No, thank you. No, thank you, Simply. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Oh. Thank you, Sarah. Will you share it with us?
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah. Oh, man.